Right, so this will just be a little introduction to the Fautor website, and I'll go over all the different things you can do on the website. Of course, me, Goran, and Lucas are very familiar with all these things, but for your sake, Christian, it might be good to just refresh your memory of all the things you can do on this website. So let's start. So perhaps the main functionality of Fautor would be to fund various research-related projects. So this can be anything from research positions, but it can also include things like workshops, experiments, and various other things. So we keep it extremely flexible, what you can fund through the platform. The second functionality would be as a promotion website. So you can write news articles about various scientific pieces. You can also link to external articles. So there's a few things you can do in the way of promotion. What's quite nice about Fautor is, there are many other sites which do funding, research funding, for example, crowdfunding, and which also do promotion. But one thing that Fautor does, which is a bit extra, is that it uses researchers' articles as a channel to collect funds, but also to gain attention for the research that researcher is doing. And these papers also serve as a basis for various articles that you can write on the site, where you can promote very specific pieces of research that you've done. So we'll go over in a bit how this works in future slides. But the last functionality that Fautor has is it allows the support of the peer review process. So, you write an article, typically the journal then goes and asks other scientists in the field to review the article and see if the science is correct, if, there's this validation process. And typically these reviewers don't get any remuneration for their efforts. So Fautor sort of helps in this way. And there's a mechanism where if you've reviewed articles, you can get some remuneration for that work. Also, quite recently, Goran and Lucas have implemented a ChatGPT interface on the site, which is pretty cool. So we'll be discussing that a bit later. But there's also interfaces now with Inspire, so you can, very quickly upload your papers to the site and extract all the metadata from Inspire. Okay, so let's go into a bit more detail about how all these things work. So the method of research funding on the site goes a bit like this. So this is very qualitative, but it'll just give you an idea. So let's say you have someone called Mary, and she wants to create a research grant for another scientist called Mary. And so what she does is she goes on the site, she creates this grant, and through this process, she generates a number of shares. These shares all have some associated costs in Fautor coins, which are equivalent to Swiss francs. And then other users on the site can take a look at this grant, see if it's worth their funding or their contribution, and they can buy shares of this grant. And by grant, I mean it can be anything, but in this case, we're talking about a grant, right? And at some point, hopefully all the shares would have been bought, and you have a fully funded project on the site. And at that point, you can channel that money to some recipient of this grant. Or, for example, if you wanted to organize a workshop, you'll get the funding for that workshop. So it's quite simple. You just generate shares, and people can go and contribute to that by buying shares. Okay. And, well, like I said earlier, it's very flexible. So you can use this to fund, for example, conferences, experiments, research positions, workshops, and a bunch of other things. Okay. So Quite related to the funding is how papers are used on the site. So just to go through what typically happens in science is, a scientist does a bunch of science and then writes up the results of all this work into an article. And then what that scientist can do is they can take that article. So here we have an example and upload it to the Fautor platform. And when I say upload, they typically just upload all the metadata of that article. And by doing that in this process, they also generate a number of shares, which other users on the platform can then go and buy. And through this purchasing process, the author of that article gains some remuneration. And then those coins or that money that they generate through these shares can then be spent on funding research projects, as we saw in the previous slide. Okay. So yeah, like I said, now they can go use those coins to fund a project on Fautor. So the next thing is that Fautor lets you publicize your own research. So, here's an example on the site. You can write like a nice little research article with a photo and, explain some of the technical details in less technicality to other users on the site. So that's quite nice. Of course, these are all written by the scientists themselves, and there's very little validation, of course, but I think one of our philosophies is we want as little moderation as possible on the site. So that's quite nice, I think. And the final thing is we acknowledge peer review. So like I said, you write an article, and then that article is sent to some reviewer who validates it. But that reviewer can then also upload their review to the Fautor site. So in this case, Marie Curie, if she was asked to review this paper here by the journal, she would get a unique identifier for that review. And using that identifier, she can gain a review on Fautor. So she just basically uploads this review identifier to Fautor. And by doing that, she's entered in what's called a peer review pot, which I'll explain now. So throughout the year, users on the Fautor site can donate to this pot of funds on the Fautor site. And at the end of the year, all the funds that are collected through these donations are then distributed amongst all the scientists that have done peer review and have uploaded their unique peer review tokens or identifiers to the site. So that way, through the peer review process, these scientists are getting something back. So that's the end of the little introduction. I think that's covered all the main functionality on the website. But yeah, Christian, if you have any questions or something was unclear, or if Goran and Lucas want to add something.